Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at a conflict that completely reshaped global geopolitics, international economics, and the entire Middle East. We're talking about the 2026 Iran War. We are going to break down exactly how this massive conflict kicked off, how it rapidly escalated into a chaotic multi-front regional war, and the staggering global impact it left in its wake. Let's start with a number that sets the scale right away. 1,200. That is the staggering number of bombs dropped by Israel and the United States in just the first 24 hours of the conflict. It immediately thrusts us into the sheer, unprecedented intensity of this war. This wasn't just some minor skirmish. It was a massive, highly coordinated aerial campaign right out of the gate.
Section 1. The surprise attack. The war actually opened right in the middle of ongoing nuclear negotiations. The U.S. and Israel launched what they called Operation Epic Fury, achieving absolute tactical surprise.
To really understand this, we need to look at how quickly it all happened. The speed here is just dizzying. On February 27th, U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the operation directly from Air Force One. The very next day, a massive wave of strikes hit over 500 military targets. In a highly consequential moment, Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was assassinated alongside several top military commanders. Simultaneously, immense cyber attacks triggered a 60-hour internet blackout across Iran, essentially dropping connectivity to just 1% of normal levels. It was total chaos. And by March 1st, a reeling nation saw an interim leadership council step in to take control. So what does this all mean, and why did it happen? Well, to look at this impartially, we have to examine the dueling justifications. The U.S. and Israel firmly argued they were preempting an imminent attack. They cited the absolute need to dismantle Iran's nuclear and missile capabilities, and U.S. leadership openly discussed the goal of regime change. On the flip side, you have Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency. Iran entirely denied preparing any attack, stating they were simply defending their sovereignty. Plus, the AIEA stated there was no evidence of an ongoing nuclear weapons program at the time. So we're seeing two completely conflicting political and military narratives colliding head-on.
Section 2. Iran strikes back. That initial wave of strikes immediately triggered a massive domino effect across the region, known as Operation True Promise IV. And this brilliantly illustrates the immediate regional spillover. Iran's retaliation didn't just target Israel and U.S. bases, it swept right across the entire Persian Gulf. From Manama in Bahrain to the international airport in Kuwait, down to Abu Dhabi and Riyadh, and even striking oil tankers off the coast of Oman. Think about that for a second. What started as a targeted U.S. Israeli strike became a multi-front regional war, essentially overnight. As we moved into the second week, the high-tech, high-stakes nature of the combat led to some truly unprecedented military firsts. The U.S. Navy submarine USS Charlotte torpedoed and sank the Iranian frigate IRS Dina. That's actually the very first time an American submarine sank a ship in active combat since World War II. We also saw an Israeli F-35 shoot down an Iranian Yak-130, marking the first time an F-35 ever shot down a crewed fighter jet in air-to-air combat. But in a major technological counter, Iranian forces managed to shoot down a U.S. Air Force F-15E and heavily damaged a stealth U.S. F-35. The modern warfare on display here was incredibly intense. Section 3. Choking the global economy. Let's zoom out to the macro level, because when you have a massive conflict in the Persian Gulf involving energy superpowers, the global economy feels it immediately. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just how staggering and disproportionate the financial damage was across the region in a matter of weeks. By late March, the estimated cost to the U.S. military was $25 billion. For the Arab countries involved, it was over $120 billion. And for Iran, their government assessed the economic damage to their nation at a jaw-dropping $300 billion. The financial hemorrhage was absolutely massive. So how did this economic damage actually manifest physically on the water? Well, we saw the emergence of a dual blockade. It was a simultaneous chokehold. The U.S. Navy was actively intercepting and blockading ships traveling to or from Iranian ports. Meanwhile, Iran attempted to completely block international shipping through the critical Strait of Hormuz. This dual blockade led to the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market, causing global oil prices to spike by 40%. That meant the cost of fuel, shipping, and everyday goods skyrocketed for consumers around the globe almost instantly. Section 4. The Middle East engulfed. Beyond the economics and the high-level geopolitics, we really have to look at the micro-level human impact of this conflict.
The psychological warfare and rhetoric escalated right alongside the physical strikes. Just listen to the absolute contrast in these statements. You have U.S. President Donald Trump stating an intent to, quote, bring them back to the Stone Ages, where they belong. On the other side, a senior Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps commander vowed to, quote, set fire to any ship coming through the Strait of Hormuz. This fiery, uncompromising rhetoric from both sides fueled the intensity of the war and pretty much eliminated any early off-ramps for de-escalation. Now, the human cost of that intensity was profound, though it's heavily obscured by the fog of war. The casualty counts differ wildly depending on the source you consult. U.S. and Israeli claims point to over 6,000 Iranian military personnel killed, but leave civilian counts unspecified. The Iranian government claimed 3,468 total killed, leaning toward heavy civilian casualties. Meanwhile, the NGO Hrana documented 1,221 military and 1,701 civilian deaths. Looking at these varying reports shows us exactly how difficult it is to get an accurate picture, but it absolutely confirms the undeniable and tragic loss of human life across the board. Beneath all the geopolitical maneuvering, the real-world devastation simply shattered civilian life. A girls' elementary school in Manab was hit due to outdated U.S. targeting data. Irreplaceable cultural heritage, like the Safavid-era Rashk Palace, was reduced to rubble, and the century-old Pasteur Institute Medical Center was heavily damaged. Plus, the spillover into Lebanon was catastrophic, escalating into a war there that killed over 2,000 people. It's incredibly vital to remember these specific tragedies to grasp the true toll of the war. Section 5. A fragile stalemate. After weeks of devastating strikes, the conflict entered its final, and perhaps most precarious, phase. Let's trace these messy, uncoordinated peace efforts. On April 8th, Pakistan actually managed to broker a 2-week ceasefire between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. But just days later, on April 11th, talks in Islamabad completely failed, leading the U.S. to announce its formal naval blockade of Iranian ports. It wasn't until April 16th that Israel and Lebanon agreed to a totally separate 10-day truce. By May 2026, these fragile truces were being extended on paper, sure. But the reality on the ground was very different. Secret strikes by nations like the UAE and continuous U.S. ship interceptions in the Gulf carried right on. Which brings us to our final point, and a critical question to leave you with. With dual blockades still effectively choking the region, massive regional economic damage sustained, and Iran's nuclear facilities damaged but the core geopolitical issues entirely unresolved, is this a true ceasefire or just the eye of the storm? The global order remains incredibly fragile right now, and understanding these exact dynamics is absolutely crucial to seeing what happens next. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep seeking the facts, and I'll see you next time.